schism, there were two popes, each protesting that they were the right one. And so amidst the confusion, Wycliffe was left in a state of relative peace to carry on the work that he was called to do. He was a big believer in the ministry, in preaching the gospel, and he trained men known as the Lollards, sending them all over the country preaching the gospel. But his greatest achievement, and what he's most known for, is translating the Bible into the local language of the Hebrew. Out of Latin, which even at that time was a dead language, and only the educated and the priests read it. This was seen as heresy. It was forbidden and viewed as dangerous. A church leader in Wycliffe's day said, "And so the gospel pearl is thrown before swine trodden underfoot. And that which used to be so dear to both clergy and laity has become a joke. And this precious gem of the clergy has been turned into the sport of the laity." And that was the view of the church leaders of that day about Wycliffe translating the Bible. But Wycliffe wrote, "Christ and his apostles taught the people in the language best known unto them. It is certain that the truth of the Christian faith becomes more evident the more the faith is known. Therefore, the doctrine should not only be in Latin, but in the common tongue." And so the lesson that we can learn from Wycliffe is that the Bible is precious. Having it in our own language, to be able to read it for ourselves, is a precious gift that many died for. Therefore, let us commit to reading our Bibles every day.
Amen.
Then we move on to Luther. And of course, going through the Reformation, I'm only going to hit a couple of the big figures. It's impossible to get everybody in this time of. So we move on to Luther. In 1517, Pope Leo X was eager to proceed with the erection of the great church of St. Peter. And in order to raise the funds necessary, rigorous methods of fundraising needed to be employed. And so the Pope issued indulgences to that end. In Germany, the responsibility of selling indulgences was given to a salesman by the name of Johann Tetzel. And when Tetzel would approach a town, a messenger would go before him proclaiming, "The grace of God and the Holy Father and of the Holy Father is at your gates." And the towns would welcome this false preacher as he proposed a rather easy tax. He promised to pardon all sin, all future sin, that the purchaser would commit from here on, and that not even repentance was necessary. Furthermore, he claimed the indulgences had not only the power to forgive the living, but the dead as well. Tetzel's famous quote was, "The very moment the money clinks against the bottom of the chest, the soul escapes from purgatory and flies to heaven." At this time, Luther was still a priest of the Church of Rome and had to hear people's confessions. Problems arose when his parishioners presented Tetzel's indulgences to Luther, and Luther was calling them nothing but a fraud. Around this time also, Luther preached a powerful sermon on indulgences and the grace of God. He also sent a detailed program to the archbishop and local bishop. And it was amidst these events that on the Festival of All Saints, Luther posted on the university door his 95 theses, or doctrinal statements against the selling of indulgences. For this, Martin Luther was summoned by Rome to answer for his teachings. And after a back and forth with a papal legate that went nowhere, a papal bull was issued excommunicating Luther and his followers, which Luther later publicly burned in Wittenberg. A few years later was the Diet of Worms, where he was condemned and excommunicated. And the interesting thing about this diet of worms is that he had already been excommunicated. So to call him back and give him a voice, they were almost undermining what they had already done by bringing it back up. And these are where Luther said these famous words when he was being called on to recant. Unless I am convinced by the scriptures and plain reason, I do not accept the authority of popes and councils, for they have often contradicted each other. My conscience is captive to the word of God. Here I stand, I can do no other. God help me. And born just a little bit after Luther. He's a little bit younger than Luther. And his, he had a couple of contributions, but the one that I want to focus on was his denunciation of prayers going through priests. To him, the contribution from him is you can go directly to God. You don't need priests.
Amen.
He was also a man of very high moral character, as were most of, or all of these men that I'm going to talk about. But at his death, Pope Pius IV said, the strength of the heretic Calvin consisted in this, that money never had the slightest charm to him. If I had such servants, my dominion would extend from sea to sea. Also, Calvin was very interested in order, and it's from Calvin that we get our liturgy. The pieces that go into our liturgy, either the prayer, hymn, and sermon, was to him ideal. Then in the 1600s comes John Smith. And he's an interesting fellow. But he believed in believer's baptism as opposed to infant sprinkling. And the term believer baptism just refers to you have to be of old enough to consent before you can be baptized. And so in 1609, the first General Baptist Church was founded by Smith and others of similar persuasion. And because all of these men had already been baptized as infants, sprinkling, it became evident that they needed to be rebaptized as consenting adults. And the way this was done, John Smith actually baptized himself. And at this point, baptism by immersion hadn't come around just to the point that you need to be old enough to accept it. It hadn't gone around immersion, so he just poured water on their head at this point. So he poured a vial of water on his head. And then he did the same to the others after he baptized himself. But by 1689, the Baptist Catechism of 1689 is where we see that they had gotten to the point of baptism by immersion. It says in that catechism, baptism is an ordinance of the New Testament ordained by Jesus Christ to be unto the party baptized, a sign of his fellowship with him in his death and resurrection, of his being engrafted into him, of remission of sins, and of giving Jesus Christ to live and walk in newness of life. Those who do actually profess repentance towards God, faith in and obedience to our Lord Jesus Christ, are the only proper subjects of this ordinance. And so to them, by that point, it was not only you got to be old enough, but the proper method was introduced, being immersion. The body goes all the way underwater and come back up. And then from John Smith, we have Wesley. And John Wesley is the founder of the Methodist movement, as most of us know. And he famously said, the world is my parish. And by that he meant wherever he was in the world, it was his duty to spread the light of the gospel. For John Wesley, missionaries, mission, evangelism was important. Spreading the word. He felt a duty to preach, and it's estimated that in his life, he traveled over 240,000 miles on horseback to this end. And that brings us to the late 1830s, where I will spend most of my time. In the late 1830s, a man by the name of Miller prior to becoming the student of prophecy we now regard him as, was a deist. And I'm trying to read the sermon, and judging by that, I'm assuming that the pastor still wrote out the sermons, but if he wasn't able to be there, the deacon would read it, as opposed to the pastor. But when the deacons read the sermons, they weren't that good. He just didn't like it. And so he complained to his mother, and he said, if I was up there, I could do that. Well, he had that chance. And he had to tell her that he was going to read the sermon. And at this point, he was still a deist. So, as the story goes, his wife laughed. Because there was going to be a deist up there reading the sermon. And this sermon was on the topic was on the influence of parents on their children and the duty and responsibility that parents have towards their children. And it doesn't sound like the sermon topic that would convict an unbeliever, but evidently as he was up there, the message pierced his heart. And he was convicted, he got emotional, and he actually had to walk out before finishing the sermon with the overwhelming emotions coming up in him. And so from that point on, William Miller devoted much of his time to the study of God's Word. In particular, the prophecies interested him. And the one prophecy in particular, in Daniel 8:13 and 14, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. As William Miller studied this, he became increasingly convinced that the sanctuary was the earth, and the cleansing was Jesus' second coming. But he wasn't really one to put himself out there. And so he shared this among a couple of close friends, but that was about it. But as his burden weighed on him, he brought it to the Lord in prayer, and he said that if a path opens up, if the opportunity arises, then I will. But I'm not going to go looking for it. And sure enough, the opportunity did arise. He was invited to speak at a local church, and he presented his message, and it spread. And by 1844, by the time of the Great Disappointment, the movement had grown to about 50,000. But then comes October 23rd, 1844. And a group of Millerites, they were down to about 50 or so. After 50,000, and Jesus didn't come, a lot of them walked away. They just decided there was no truth in that message. But those core, that core of 50, as they came and they studied and they prayed, they came to the conclusion that October 22, 1844 was the correct date of the prophecy. That is the date the prophecy ended. But it wasn't to predict Jesus' second coming. It was the day that Jesus moved in his high priestly ministry from the holy place to the most holy place on the anti-typical Day of Atonement. And so now, many of you probably have this verse memorized, but Psalm 77:13. Thy way, O God, is in the sanctuary. Who is so great a God as our God? Yeah. And so our message as Adventists, our unique message that no other denomination has, is this message right here of the sanctuary. Of the idea that Jesus in heaven is performing duties as our high priest and has moved into the most holy place and begun what's called the investigative judgment. Also known as a pre-Advent judgment. The two popular Protestant positions are that the judgment ended on the cross, or that the judgment will happen when Jesus comes again. But if we look at the sanctuary itself, and The way the sanctuary is set up is there's a veil, a curtain that goes around the whole thing, and you enter the first veil of door, and you come to the courtyard. And as you enter the courtyard, the first article of furniture is the altar sacrifice. And the second is the laver. And from there, you go through another veil, a second veil, and you have three articles of furniture. You have the table of showbread, the lampstand, and the altar of incense in the middle. And then you go through a third veil. And through that third veil, you enter the most holy place, where sits the Ark of the Covenant, and on top of that, the mercy seat where it rests cherubs on the side, and Shekinah glory on the mercy seat. And so the idea that judgment ended at the cross of Calvary would be the very first article of furniture. It would be the altar of sacrifice, where Jesus gave his life. Then the laver would represent the burial. And then as you go in, the lampstand, the altar of incense, and the table of showbread would be his duties as high priest. And then he goes into the most holy place in 1844, and there you have the investigative judgment once he moves in there. So to say that the judgment happened at the cross, that would have judgment at the very beginning of the sanctuary, and that doesn't make any sense. And as for the judgment occurring at the second coming, what we have is, and the idea that we have at that point is that Jesus goes in, and what happens there is the investigative judgment. When Jesus comes back, he's executing that judgment. So it is a form of judgment, but just like in the trial, you're brought forth and you're tried, but then you come back to be sentenced. And so when Jesus comes the second coming, he's executing the sentence that has been agreed upon in the investigation portion of the judgment. And as I was putting this together, I kind of had a vague outline, and then God has a way of bringing you the resources to enhance your sermon, and you have a vague idea of where you want to go. And so I was on Audioverse, and brand new sermons uploaded, like within the top 5, there was a series from David Shin, all on the sanctuary. And he brought out a very, very interesting point. And for this, I want you to open your Bible. I want you to see this. We're going to go to Daniel 7. And I hope that this is as exciting to you as it is to me. And so Daniel 7, most of us have this outline in our minds already. Daniel has a bit, Daniel has a vision. Let's say the king, that's on this one, that's so far. Daniel has a vision of the beasts. You have the lion with eagle's wings, and then which is Babylon. And then you move on, and the second beast you see is a bear raised up on one side with 3 ribs in his mouth, which is Medo-Persia. Then you have the 4-headed leopard with 4 wings, representing Greece. Then you have a great and terrible beast with 10 horns on his head, and a little horn comes up, plucking up 3 of them by the roots as he comes up. Representing pagan Rome turning into papal Rome. And then I want to pick up there. And we see Daniel 7, the first part is in chronological order. He sees the beasts in the order that they will arise. And so with that in mind, let's go to verse 7. We'll start there. 7:7. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet thereof. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. And after this, Daniel sees, I beheld till the thrones were cast down. And this cast down, I was looking up last night in the Strong's Concordance, and it's actually another translation could be set in place. So it would, I think, make more sense given the context of the vision. I beheld till the thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as a burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened.
Good.
And so we have here the visions of the beasts. And then we move to our judgment scene where God himself is set on the throne. Over 100,000 angels, 10,000 times 10,000. So over 100,000 angels and there as witnesses. And the books are opened. And God is reviewing the books. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. And so with this tells me, and the point that was brought out, is this judgment scene is set before the end of the world. The judgment scene is set, and the beast still has his power while the judgment is going on. The beast isn't destroyed yet. And so this is a picture of the judgment going on in heaven while we're still on earth, before the earth has come to its final end. Verse 12, as concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season. 13, I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom, that which shall not be destroyed. So this judgment goes on, and as a result of this judgment, Christ is given his everlasting kingdom. His people are deemed worthy to inhabit the kingdom with him. But Christ taking his kingdom isn't the judgment in and of itself. There is this investigative judgment that happens up in verses 9 and 10. And then it's executed later. And we'll compare this scene with Daniel, starting in Daniel 11:40. So just a couple verses over. And at the time of the end, the king of the south shall push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horses and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. And he shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be his steps. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help. And before I move on, we're going to bring this up into my end of Daniel 12:3. But before I move on, as I was reading this, I had the thought in my mind. This is because in Daniel 12:1, Michael stands up. So 11:45, we're right at the end of time. And so I had the thought, and I haven't studied this the thought just came to me last night. So I'm proposing this as a thought for you to think about and look more into in your study. But this king of the north, that's slain at the end, I wonder if it could be that this king of the north is synonymous with the little horn that's also slain at the end that we saw in Daniel 7:11. Yeah, Daniel 7:11. I beheld then the voice of the great word which the horn spake. I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body was destroyed, and given to the burning flame. I wonder also if this king of the north could be the Lord of Babylon, because it says that it came to its end, and there were none that come to help. And in Revelation 18, I want to say 4 through 8, 18, 4 through 8. Revelation 18, 4 through 8 it is. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out for my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her. And double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled to her double. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her, for she saved in her heart as a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burdened with fire." And we saw in Daniel that the little horn is destroyed and burned with fire. And so I wonder if the king of the north, the little horn, and the sword of Babylon are not different ways of speaking of the same power. And then I just present that to you as something for you to think about in your own studies. But moving on from Revelation 11 into Daniel 11 into Daniel 12. We see in Daniel 12, after the end of this king of the north, at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book. And this book is again reminiscent of the judgment scene where the judgment was set and the books were opened. And so in looking through the books, they were determining who was fit, who's going to be part of the people that are saved, and who is not, written in the book. Verse 2, "And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever." And so the other point that I want to bring out, that I can't talk about this verse without bringing up, that these events and this job given to Michael don't seem fit for just an angel. This is not something that an archangel would be given the task of doing or would be able to do. This is Jesus that's standing up and who's going to come to save his people at the end of time. Amen. This Michael is in fact Jesus' name before he became a man. That's what he was known as in heaven. And now, my favorite part, that's why it's last. We're going to talk about, go figure, the sanctuary. Exodus 25:9. Exodus 25:9. And this is going to be mostly, there's going to be a lot of comparing. We're starting in Exodus 25:9. And in Exodus 25:9, it says, according to all that I showed you, after the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall ye make it. And so then the question comes, where was the pattern, right? Right? And most of us already agree, acknowledge, and understand that this pattern was in fact of a heavenly origin. It was a pattern of the temple in the tabernacle, the temple in heaven. And we can confirm that with Revelation 11 in verse 19. John says, and the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, which is in the most holy place. And there were lightnings and voices and thunderings, and in verse 22. And this is what was brought up to me in the last couple of weeks. That was just, for me, it was very, well, it was new. I hesitate to say mind-blowing, but it was close to that magnitude. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven, prepared as a bride, adorned. Not 2. And I saw no temple therein, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb. Some have used this to say that there is no heavenly temple. There are no heavenly origins. That the earthly tabernacle is just because of sin. Because sin happened, God had to give Moses a mechanism for understanding the way that sin would be eradicated. But I contest, I protest. Exodus 25:8, and this is where we're going to wrap this up. It won't be the last verse, but we're coming close to the conclusion. Exodus 25:8. And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. And keep that phrasing in your mind as we jump back to Revelation 21, verse 3. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God.
Amen.
And one more point, the most holy place was a perfect cube, the same width, length, height, it was a perfect cube. The New Jerusalem is also a perfect cube. And so the point that was made, and I tend to agree with, is that the New Jerusalem doesn't have a temple because the New Jerusalem is the most holy place for the new earth. Now, as far as that goes, is there a holy place? Is there a courtyard? I really have no idea. But the New Jerusalem will be the equivalent of the most holy place. But there is no barrier between us and God. And so that's why I'm not sure if there's a holy place, or at least a courtyard. Because we are in the very presence of God. That's where he chooses to sit and dwell with men. And that is the worship center for the entire universe. After Jesus comes back, will be the New Jerusalem. And so, with that thought, I conclude. 272, I believe is the number. Give me the mic. Father God, once again, I want to thank you for those that you have sent before us to pave a path that we may enjoy the freedom to study, to read your word in our own language, and that with that, we would look forward to your soon return, to make preparations, to be ready, so that we can enjoy all of eternity in heaven.